Hi, in this video I am going to be talking about how to help reduce anxiety by using your imagination differently. I'm Orla Kirby. I'm a therapist specialising in helping people move themselves away from severe anxiety and or OCD. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mean by using your imagination differently. Then I'm going to cover what I call the 2 scenes from the future, 2 scenes from the past technique, and I'll probably cover that one the most in depth. Then I'm going to run through some other techniques for using your imagination in this different, really beneficial way. So I'm going to talk about colour, kind of colour body technique, how to use your favourite place in nature or a favourite place in nature, and then some simpler visualizations that you can use. And lastly, I'm going to touch on anchors. I might at some stage make a whole series of videos on anchoring and anchors, but I'm going to touch on that a little at the end. Okay, so first of all, what do I mean by this, using your imagination differently? Well, if you think about when you're anxious, when you're experiencing anxiety or an anxious thought, anxious feeling, you may well be using your imagination. Probably though, you're going to be imagining something negative, or even if you don't realise it, in fact, if you're feeling anxious, you're probably somewhere at some subconscious level imagining the future in a negative way, or imagining something negative. This is a case of the kind of top part of your brain, the imaginative cortex, being kind of bossed around, led around by the earlier lizard brain or chimp brain, right in the centre of the brain. This earlier brain is the part of your brain that's connected with fight or flight. And if you'd like more information on that kind of structural, world of your brain, as it were, you can go to orlakirby.com /how your brain works, and that will give you more of an idea of what I'm talking about there. But for the purpose of this video, think about this negative imagining of the future as the cortex, the part of your brain that's capable of imagination, of creativity, being led around by this earlier brain, the part of your brain that is very much designed around survival and protecting you, and that is very much at the root of anxiety. By engaging with your imagination differently, by using your imagination differently, I mean a kind of richer, fuller engagement with your cortex, where it's your cortex leading this whole top huge part of your brain, this vast resource that has your powers of reasoning and your imagination, your creativity, that part of the brain being really fully lit up and active and leading. So how do we do this? Essentially, anytime you're imagining anything positive and or where you feel reasonably positive as you're imagining it, that is a really full, rich use of your cortex. So, and we can't really do that at the same time as being anxious. You can't do both at once because anxiety is so connected with the flight response, and that is very connected with your early lizard brain or chimp brain, this small part of your brain right in the centre, that part being in charge. So if you allow or encourage the top part of your brain, the cortex, to be in charge, you're necessarily guiding yourself into a less anxious or non-anxious state. Okay, so the first technique I'm going to talk about for how you actually do this is what I call the 2 scenes from the future, 2 scenes from the past technique. And this is basically to have scenes or rooms in your mind that you've already really built up and established, so you can then guide yourself that way. So if I'm thinking about, a meeting next week, say I'm going to a networking event and I feel nervous about it, I feel worried. And I think, oh, what if I fall over? What if I forget what to say? What if, someone says something that makes me feel stupid? Say that's something that I'm nervous about. I might play out that in my mind, consciously, and I might imagine that going badly, or I might just get a feeling of tension or nervousness, and somewhere at a subconscious level, I'm probably playing out a negative version of that event. and of course, I realise that anxiety is complex and there's many different kinds of anxiety, but I'm just using this as an example. So if I want to shift away, if I wake up in the morning and I'm having a thought like, oh, I don't want to go to that event next week, how do I shift myself away from that? I could imagine that the event itself going wonderfully. I could imagine it going brilliantly and me really enjoying myself and feeling really comfortable and so on. And that would be really powerful if I could manage to do that. However, that's quite challenging, right? That's quite hard. And what might be easier is to shift into another kind of positive imagining of the future, or an unconnected one. So I could imagine a holiday I'm going on next year, or I could imagine meeting up with a friend for lunch next week, or I could imagine something that's happening tomorrow, right? Any kind of future positive visualizing that I do is going to be a really useful way to shift myself away from thinking negatively about the future. So what I generally recommend to clients doing is thinking about 2 scenes, think about 5 years' time, and think what would be my ideal working day, what would be my ideal Saturday, and what would be my ideal holiday, right? Just, brainstorm a bit around those, and then do the same thing for 10 years. What would be my ideal working day, what would be my ideal holiday, and what would be my ideal Saturday or day off? And then when you have a rough idea of that, you want to kind of pick one for each. So you could pick like a holiday for 5 years time, in 5 years time, what age will I be then? What age will the people I know be then? Make it as real as you can. And then you could pick a working day for 10 years. Or you could pick a working day for 5 years and a Saturday for 10 years. But you kind of want to make them different from each other. And then you want to build up the scenes. So, example, if you pick a holiday in 5 years, you could think, okay, where am I? Don't just vaguely imagine the whole holiday. Pick like a particular cafe by a particular beach. You can see this kind of view. What can you hear? How are you feeling? What can you actually touch with your body? Think about all of the details that you're experiencing. So in detail, what does every little thing look like? What are all the quieter sounds you can hear in the background? And how are you feeling? What are all the different feelings? Are your hands touching anything? Are your feet touching anything? What's your body touching in this room, in this space? Can you feel anything from other people? So this is a very detailed, very rich imagining. And you could layer this up over time, or you could spend a lot of time on it at once. You might want to write a whole page about it, or you might want to draw it, or you might want to just close your eyes and go into a relaxed state and think about it for a while. But you want to put some time at the beginning, really building it up and making it very vivid to yourself. Then, when you've done that, you've essentially made this room. You've made something in your brain. There's a real thing that's been created there. It's going to be easier to go back to that, imagining now that you've invested all this time and effort in building it up and making it very compelling, making it very real with all of this detail. And then you do the same thing for the 10 years scene. So you have these 2 scenes made. And then I also recommend thinking about scenes from your past. So in this case, we're looking at memories. And you could pick, again, you could think about 5 years and 10 years ago and pick a lovely memory from those times, or 10 years and 20 years ago, or just any time in your life. Although I recommend it probably be more than a year. I'd say that probably works best. And because it wants to be a certain amount of effort to get there, right? If you use something from yesterday, it's not quite the same. And again, you want to be able to experience that memory in a detailed, rich way. It wants to seem real when you think about it. Sometimes you might need to do a bit of colouring in, right? And that's okay, that's allowed. So sometimes we can think of something and we can experience it very vividly, quite easily. Other times you might just have a vague feeling. I can remember that holiday and I know that the weather was lovely. I can't quite remember what that cafe looked like that I was in. That's fine, just decide what it's going to look like, right? Pick colours for the walls, decide that you're going to be smelling coffee, just fill it in. And ask yourself the questions like, what can I see? What can I hear? What can I feel? Either in terms of emotional feelings or what I can feel in terms of touch. What am I thinking? What am I saying? Who's there? Am I on my own or are there other people there? And you really colour it in like that. Or in some cases, it might be that as you imagine it, you just recover those details. That happens by itself. Or it might immediately be easy to access all of the detail if it's a really important memory to you. Okay, so you pick, and again, I'd make them quite different from each other. So maybe don't pick two from the same year. You could pick one from 5 years ago and one from 10 years ago, or you could pick one from when you were a child, one from when you were a teenager, or one from, pick different parts of your life, and maybe different sorts of scenes or different kinds of activities or something, because they want to be specific and different in your mind. And again, you can spend some time building these up, really richly developing them. And when you've done that, it's a question then of being able to access them in real time, as it were. So, if you wrote a whole page about it, it might be good to enrich that even further then by just, lying down, closing your eyes, breathing deeply and spending some time in that particular scene of the future or scene of the past. And then in terms of how to use this to shift yourself away from anxiety, you could, if you're experiencing negative imagining about the future, you could think, doing some negative imagining about the future now, I'm going to shift myself. And you can just draw around you that scene from the future, and you could start with whatever's most powerful to you. You could start with the sound of it, let that kind of build up around you, and then add in the visual, what can you see, add in the feelings. Or you could start with any one of those that feels the most powerful and add in the other ones. Or another technique is to imagine that you're just very gently closing the door on this negative imagining that you're doing about the future. Gently close the door. You're not slamming the door, you're not deleting anything. You're just thinking, I'm gently closing the door on this. And you walk along a corridor or a path. You can imagine anything you want. Is it a wooden corridor? Is it a marble corridor? Is it a stone corridor? You walk along the corridor and you find two doors. And behind those doors, and again, think, what do the doors look like? What are they made out of? How do they feel in your hands? Behind those doors, are the two really positive imaginings of the future, these 5 years and 10 years. And you get to decide then. You can remind yourself that you have a choice. I'm going to decide to open this door. I'm going to decide to open this door. And then you pick whichever one you want to go into, you open that door, and then you do this process of, so if you're very auditory and sounds are important to you, you might want to really experience the sounds, and then the look of the place, and the feelings, and so on, and kind of draw the scene around you. And it's okay if it takes a while, it's fine. And then the exact same thing with the past, right? If you find yourself thinking in a very negative way about the past, and you want to shift away from that, you can simply redirect those scenes that you've built up in your mind already. Okay, so that's the two scenes from the future, two scenes from the past technique. I've used this very effectively myself, and so have lots of my clients. I really recommend giving it a go. But you need to do that early work first, right? You need to do the building up of the scenes so they feel really rich and really real and really enjoyable to you. And so there's lots of emotion in them, and lots of detail, lots of sensory detail. Okay, so just briefly now I'm going to go over a few other techniques to give you some other ideas, and I might in future make whole videos about these other techniques. So one is where you just imagine your whole body surrounded with a colour. Pick your favourite colour. You could pick bright green or a deep purple or beautiful orange like the sunset. Whatever is a lovely colour for you, or you could try out different ones. Imagine your body completely surrounded in a glow of that colour, or a cloud or a mist of that colour. And it really is that simple. You can just do that, or you can bring in breathing as well, and you can imagine yourself breathing in, and that your whole body is like a kind of 3D outline, and you're drawing this colour into your body, and as you breathe out, that colour is going back into the mist around your body. You draw it into your body again as you breathe in, and you breathe out, and it goes back into the mist around your body. And that's a really lovely one. Another idea is just to pick a favourite place. It could be inside, it could be a museum or an art gallery, or a room in someone's house where you felt really safe and really comfortable, or it could be a favourite place outside in nature. It could be close to you, it could be somewhere you've been once. And you simply, a bit like with the scenes from the future and past, you draw it around yourself. So you practice first when you're feeling calm and you're feeling relatively okay, putting yourself into a relaxed state with slow breathing, and really drawing around yourself all the details. What does it feel? How does it look? What sounds are there? How am I feeling? All those details. And then, it's going to be much easier whenever you want to re-enter that whole scene, and also the positive emotion connected with that. Other ideas, so kind of simple visualizations or imaginings, would be, for example, like a very beautiful lake with a sunset behind or a sunrise. Just thinking, oh, how tranquil that lake is, how peaceful. And putting yourself, first of all, just when nothing's going on and you feel pretty great or fine, putting yourself into a relaxed state and imagining the scene. And then as you need to throughout the day, dipping back in, and then deliberately using it sometimes once you've built it up in your mind to shift yourself into a different state, into a calmer, more peaceful state. Other lovely ones that work for this is like a whole field with the grass kind of gently moving, or a tree moving in the wind, just moving slightly back and forth, or a waterfall, kind of like repeated flow of water down a cliff or down a hill, or a fountain, in the sunlight. Think about, what does the water look like as it moves, as it touches the other water. Hold that in your mind. Okay, so those are all techniques that will work better the more you practice them, and the more you practice them when you're in a relatively calm state, to kind of build them up first. And then I would just recommend, once you've done that kind of real building them up work, first of all, to just access them when you're actually feeling pretty okay, but more distracted. So you're out and about somewhere, and then use them to shift yourself away. So if you're feeling anxious or you're thinking anxious thoughts, just remind yourself, there are other things I can do with my mind. I can create beautiful experiences for myself whenever I want to. And any of these will work even better if you combine them with slow breathing. Okay, I'm going to talk very briefly now about anchors and anchoring. So anchoring is simply the idea that you anchor one thing to another thing. So like, I'm going to remember to take this medication because I'm going to always take it after I brush my teeth, right? That's a very simple anchor. What I'm mainly going to talk about here is kind of powerful emotional anchors that you can set up and then use. I'll give you an example of one that worked really beautifully for me. When I was doing hypnobirthing, that's kind of my first experience of hypnosis. There's a beautiful one that you do there. There's a lot of partner work in hypnobirthing. And there's one where my husband Liam, we kind of practiced him putting his hand here. So of course his hand was the other way around, he was standing behind me, but he put his hand here repeatedly when I was in a very relaxed state. So the idea of it is, something was taught in hypnobirthing, the birthing person goes into a very relaxed state, and the partner puts hand here, touching collarbone here. And this is then associated with that very relaxed state. And even now, right, I can definitely feel it. If I put my hand here, like, I really go back to an extent to that deep peacefulness. There's still a real feeling of that there for me. And that's not one that I use often, but that shows you the power of it, right? That's something I set up 9 years ago. It's still there. So, you might see people before they go on stage doing this sometimes, or maybe this, or, this is another, knuckles are quite good. So you can set it up on anywhere in your body. You can use any touch, but if you use something that you do a lot, so if you try to do something with the palm of your hands, for example, because, touching a lot of things and people and so on with the palms of your hands, that might just not, they might get diluted, the anchor. So I will probably make a whole series of videos really on anchoring, because it's quite a complicated thing to teach. But just briefly, if you want to set up a positive anchor, say for example you're going to use your earlobe, and I wouldn't recommend this if you have earrings that you put in a lot or what have you, but if this isn't a movement you make a lot, you could use this, right? And what you would want to do is think of a time, for example, if you're going to anchor happiness to this, you could think of a time you got really happy, like so happy, over the moon happy, so happy. And maybe write down 5 experiences like that of being so happy, right? And then you write them down, and just go to the first one and really go into that memory. Again, draw it around yourself with all the details. And as soon as you feel, it has to be genuine, as soon as you feel that happiness emotion starting inside you, you do this, right? And as soon as you feel it start to ebb, you let go, right? So our emotions go like this. They start off, they rise, and then they kind of ebb, right? And of course, we've always got lots of different emotions going on at once, so it's more complicated than that. But in terms of happiness, if you tend to get happier and happier, and then it kind of ebbs. So you're going to think of that memory, go into that memory, and as soon as you feel the start of happiness in your body, like the actual real feeling of it, you do this. And then as soon as you feel the happiness just turn, it's ebbing slightly, you take your hand straight away. And then you're going to do this repeatedly. So if you've got 5 experiences like this, the next one, you think of that time you were so happy, over the moon happy, and just as soon as you feel that happiness rising inside of you, you do this. And as soon as it starts to ebb, you take your hand away. And it wants to be the exact same touch each time, so it's a very specific touch that you're anchoring that emotional state to. And then if you do that all those 5 times, right, and then in between, ideally you want to break your state, so that means that you might want to look out the window or, move around, think about something different, shift your body around. Then, after the final breaking of state, looking out the window, you can do that touch again, so you can do this again. And you're going to feel your whole body flooded with that really rich, warm, positive emotion of happiness. And if this doesn't work straight away, that's okay. That might mean that you're carrying a lot of tension, or it might mean anything. And you could work with a professional to learn how to do this, or you could simply do some meditation, some relaxation. If you go to orlakirby.com/learn to meditate, there's a whole lot of information there to learn how to meditate by yourself. And it might be that this is going to work better for you once you're in a calmer state, and once you've kind of brought down your background level of stress, your background level of anxiety. You might need to do that first, right? But this is a technique that's going to work for everyone. So yeah, but it might be that sometimes there needs to be a certain amount of breathing and visualization and imagination work first before you can use anchoring effectively, but maybe not. It's worth having a go. Okay. So this was my video then on using imagination differently in order to reduce anxiety. The next video in this series is using improved self-awareness in order to help reduce anxiety. So if you found this one useful, I recommend watching that one. See you in the next one.